Oh, I've known Chiraya for years when she produced the live food events in Sedona, and she's been a, a warrior, but in a very positive way for peace and change and love and ascension and possibility. So she is a huge ally in this awakened movement. So I'm very excited she's here, and she's always getting amazing downloads and poetry. She's also the author of some great poetry books that I have.
I didn't
So
know that.
yes, I'm excited
Well, then
about what you have to say, Chiraya. You're muted,
yeah, and I want to do an intro as well. Let's do two intros, okay?
but I'm just really excited about leading off the day with the positive intention that Chiraya always brings to an event. So
Yes.
go ahead, Neil.
Yes. And I would like to also say that Chiraya was our first host at our first big conference in 2012 in Irvine, California. That's how we got connected. So we've been friends since 2012. Since then, she's assisted me with so many projects, even designing the current website that you see right now. She basically laid it out for me and then helped me hire someone to design the whole thing and walk with me the whole way. And whenever I have events and I need assistance, I always bring Chiraya on. And just been right there next to me the whole time, and I'm there for her. We're just like, I love you so much, and everything you do. Not only does she, is a spiritual teacher, does energy work, but she's also an entrepreneur, can help you with all types of technical stuff. She can jump onto anything. She's a really multifaceted person. So, Chiraya, I love you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here with you guys, and I just want to say what a great job everybody's doing. Brendan, you're a genius. Thank you. Alan, love you so much. Michelle, thank you so much for being the light that you are. You guys are great. And I actually feel, for some reason, stirring inside of me is this kinesthetic enthusiasm about the fact that you got booted off of Facebook today. And it's funny, but it's almost like it's the beginning of a new era for us. It's like, okay, great. If they don't want us on their platform, where do we go? How do we recreate this so that we do our vibration? And maybe we're just not a match. Maybe those vibrations are just not a match anymore. And we will recreate anew and take this as a positive thing that will propel us forward. And that's what this whole talk is about today. And Alan, feel free to chime in with questions or comments or what have you also, if you like. I created a little presentation for us, and we're going to talk about how consciousness is driving reality, and it truly is. And even though it's a little bit strange right now in the sense that it's all mixed up with lower consciousness, higher consciousness, things coming to the surface. Nevertheless, even though all of those karmas are playing out, consciousness is still nevertheless driving reality. And that is our safety net. That is our keynote. That is our way out of the fray. And here's just a little bit more about me. Everybody mentioned it so nicely. I do write books. I've got a podcast that I do occasionally, and I do research into ancient history and all kinds of fascinating things. I'm an artist, and I'm a lover of life. Now, what you think you become, what you feel you attract, what you imagine you create. And so Buddha has said this, and this is some of my art dotted throughout this presentation, by the way. Now, let's think about this. What we think we become, what we feel we attract, what we imagine we create. So does that mean that we've created all the chaos and craziness that we're experiencing right now in the earth plane? Yes, in one level it does. Now, we didn't intentionally go out and say, hey, we're going to create a bunch of chaos, but there's a lot of levels for how these things get created. We're going to get into that. And the good news is, despite what's bubbling up in the collective consciousness, we have the capacity to, and can, and will, and do reframe and refocus and pivot and shift so that our own personal experience and even the experience of our families and our communities and even our world can stay more and more positive, uplifted, harmonious, pointing to that well-being, that beauty, that love, that cherishing, that energy of compassion, that energy of friendliness and helping one another. This is what I feel humanity really has in its heart at the deepest level. And there's been a lot of interference with that. And there's been a lot of challenges to that, and people have gotten off track a little bit. But sin means missing the mark. So have we been missing the mark? You know, you could call it sin and bad and go down the negative whole of the conditioned religious thinking that actually is a lower consciousness, or you can think of it as, oh, we've just been slightly off track here with how we understand who we are and how we create. So let's keep refocalizing ourselves and get back on track. I mean, if this dude can walk on coals of fire while blowing the trumpet, you know, how much more can we do, right? So our consciousness really does drive our experience in this world. But who is in charge of your consciousness? That's really the question. Who has gotten a hold of your consciousness and who has pointed it in certain directions that you might not even be aware of? Is it all you? Are you the only one steering your consciousness right now? Or are you being influenced by the social media, by the news, by your interactions with others and your family, by social policies right now, right? So when you look at people behaving en masse in certain ways, and when you look at people having challenges, fighting with each other, now that's imprinting what? Our consciousness. So, you know, Esther Hicks says, well, you know, to Abraham, like, well, are we supposed to put our head in the sand? And at some points, the answer is yes. Actually, you know, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, kind of what Michelle was pointing to earlier. Like, it doesn't mean have no fun, because the negative polarity would say later after that, they say, well, if you don't do any of that stuff, then you're not going to have any fun. But the truth is, when we focus our consciousness enough towards what we want, we're basically not seeing the negative. We're not hearing the negative. We're not speaking the negative. We reframe it. Like, something negative happens. We see contrast in the world. And then it's not that it didn't happen. It's not that it's right or wrong, good or bad. It's not that you're not going to have emotion about it. It's not that you're going to like it, or you have to love it, because you're not going to love it. We can love unconditionally without loving the negative things that have happened. We don't love them, but we can open our heart, you see? So now we have to pivot, like Strega Nona says. So Strega Nona is the author of a children's book series. Or she's not the author, she's the character in it. And Strega Nona says, the art of magic is to see and not see. So we witness and we see all these things going on, and then we shift our consciousness and put it where we want to go. And as enough of us begin to do that, then that is literally the driving force of creation. It supersedes the power of the existing social media news, interactions with others in your mind, and how that makes you think, social policies, and everything else from the collective consciousness. You thinking for you, your inner being focusing positive energy towards a bright future is more powerful. Okay, the other places where we get conditioning to our thinking is our ancestral lineages, our past lives, and our early childhood. And these things aren't going to be necessarily obvious to us. And we haven't on purpose decided we're going to run these old patterns. I mean, in a way, we have decided on purpose, because we decided to come here and take a body, right? But that doesn't mean that we wanted to have the challenges that they brought forward. Now, on some level, you could argue maybe we did. But the point is, you're being conditioned on multiples of levels, and that conditioning can be cleared by you with the help of healers or on your own. And so all of the conditioning from ancestral lineage, past lives, early childhood, and cultural conditioning can, in fact, be cleansed, cleared, cleaned away, washed away, and our consciousness can be recreated anew. Our subconscious can be clean, pure, and pristine, white as snow, as they say, so that we can recreate the world in our own image and recreate our lives in our own image. And this is why we must learn to focus our attention on our own desires for a positive, harmonious experience of life. So we leverage the contrast, and we notice what's arising as a manifestation from all this past collective conditioning, and we forgive it, we love it, we bless it, we heal it, and we move on. And We may need to experience some of our own emotion as it arises and love that and forgive that and heal that as well. It's all part of the process. So that's why it's so important to have a daily practice right now. Divine Mother, in one of the books, gave me the recalibrations process. And you can see the books on the website, chirayadharma.com. And the practice is attune, align, dissolve, design. We attune to our high self, God, source, our spirit, whatever you call that, but just call it. I don't care what you call it, just call it. We align with our purpose in the moment, whether it's your larger purpose or a particular purpose you want to create on. We dissolve the blockages and the belief systems in the way of that coming true. And then we design our way forward by deciding how we want it to be instead. And then we can utilize numerous different types of techniques, everything from affirmations to meditation to positive thinking to reality creation scripts to vision boards to mind movies. There's dozens and dozens of tools for that designing phase, because once we have dissolved the old conditioning in the way of what we want instead, now our job is to put the inputs in that help us remain on focus towards the new goal. And as we do the energy work to dissolve the debris and detritus of the ages stuck in the subconscious mind from all those areas, it becomes easier to think the new thought. But if we don't think the new thought consistently, the default setting is probably to fall back into the old patterning. And so that's why it takes practice. It takes coherence. It takes a plan. It takes a bit of a strategy and a decision. It doesn't have to be a hardcore mental strategy decision thing where that makes you feel funky. Like that's maybe counterproductive. But how are you going to set up your day so that you can attune, align, dissolve, and design your way into the higher harmonious future that we are all feeling and know exists for us beyond these strange times that we're in? And even now in these strange times, we can have the most amazing days. We can create peace on earth every day. I really like what Maureen St. Germain said the other day on the conference. And she said, every day, wake up and steer yourself into heaven on earth. Tell the universe, tell God, tell source, hey, today I want an experience of heaven on earth. And I just love that. I think that is brilliant. And yes, absolutely, we can do that and we should do that. And the 5 keys around being able to navigate through this are forgiveness, non-attachment, non-judgment, non-resistance, and unconditional love. And these things are all deeply woven into the books that I have written. And so, well, that have come through as transmissions from the star elders, from source consciousness, from divine father consciousness, and from divine mother consciousness. Now, each one of these is a whole essay or a whole program, really, to go into. So we're going to briefly go over them today, just to touch you into it and get a bit of a reminder going, because I know you guys know this stuff already, but especially when we're in the mix of it like this, we need reminders. So forgiveness means giving up the old for the new. It's cleaning, it's cleansing, cleaning our brain, like that old Talking Heads song. I'm cleaning my brain. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. We're giving up the old for the new. We're doing Ho'oponopono. We are cleansing the subconscious of old debris and detritus. It's not really about, oh, this person did something bad, but I'm going to forgive him because he was such a bad person, but I'm going to have mercy on him and forgive him. It's not really that mindset, ultimately, when you get into the deeper spiritual code of forgiveness. That's maybe one level, right, that you need to get to in order to be able to do the radical forgiveness of, like, somehow, some way I created that. I have no idea how, because it came from all that conditioning. And that person showed up with his conditioning and met me with my conditioning. It was a match. Something that I didn't like happened. I don't want that to happen again. So I'm going to clean. I'm going to forgive all the conditioning that led me to have that experience. I forgive my ancestors. I forgive my past lives. I forgive my early childhood. I forgive the cultural conditioning. I forgive this person and all the conditioning in him. And I clean it from my subconscious. And that's super, 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 super important. This is what we do, radical forgiveness. And non-attachment is something that emerges and arises as we do forgiveness, as we awaken spiritually, as we realize that this earth plane is ever changing. It is always in flux, and it will never be the ultimately most satisfying things. It's like a playground where our consciousness outpictures itself into these images of what we have thought, really. But if we become attached to it, this is like becoming attached to Leela and Maya, and we're not really, we're like being tossed in the wind and always grasping and always trying to get something, but that something that we're trying to get is never something that's going to last. So non-attachment comes from the spiritual realization that we are immortal beings having a transient physical experience. And then non-judgment, we're talking about judge not lest you be judged. What does that mean? Well, if you put out the energy of judgment, since this is a reflective universe, that energy of being judged is going to come back to you. And it's going to box you in because you're thinking now, you've just judged those people. So now your perception is filled with thoughts about how they are. So now you have to keep experiencing them like that, most likely, unless some other thing comes in to positively change them. But it could be you. It could be you that comes in and positively helps them on their way to being different by seeing the truth of them instead of seeing how they're showing up and being negative to you. So I had a great teacher named Dr. Sylvester, and he's now passed. And he used to say, yes, there goes God. I see you in there. I see you in there. Despite whatever is going on the surface, we look for the higher consciousness. We look for the higher being in all beings, and we find it. And in that way, we can overcome our judgments. And non-resistance means we aren't reactive to all those things that are happening in a negative way. We start to go with the flow. Again, it's similar to non-attachment. And by being non-resistant, Abraham talks about this a lot. Now we are going with the flow. Now we are allowing source energy to come in. Now we are allowing all the good stuff to happen to us. And there's a lot more to say about this. It's even in physics. But let's move on to unconditional love. And unconditional love is sort of like the culmination of all these things together. Because when we love unconditionally all that is as it is, then we step above the fray. We step above the fray. You can think of the two pillars of polarity, good, bad, light, dark, right, wrong. And then our job is literally to rise above both of them and see this drama on this earth plane for what it is, a drama unfolding. And to witness it from a higher perspective and to not get caught in the fray, in the battle. It's like maybe at some point you're enjoying the fray and the battle, but it gets wearying, doesn't it? And it becomes time for us to literally rise above. It's a practice. We also need to act from our highest guidance by practicing meditation, positive thinking, getting up and setting your day in the morning. You're going to be attuned to the highest guidance, and regular daily practice is really a must for this. I really want to encourage all of us, if you haven't already got a solid daily practice to tune in with your source, to meditate, to set your day, to decide you're having heaven on earth today, or whatever it is that you like to do. I want to really encourage us to do this, especially at this time on the planet. And I am offering a meditation for free as a service. I'm doing Sunday meditations and a little talk about these things every Sunday morning for people who subscribe on my list. You get free access to the group. I'm really not selling anything. I'm just doing that for us because I know that when we focalize our consciousness, when we still our mind, when we go beyond words into the silence of love and light, things can transform in a meta way. And so I just invite anybody who feels moved by this or called to go to ChirayaDharma.com and subscribe, and then you'll get invitations to join that meditation. So we'll finish up here with a little quote from Ramana Maharshi. God dwells in you as you, and you don't have to do anything to be God realized or self-realized. It's already your true nature and state. Just drop all seeking, turn your attention inward, and sacrifice your mind to the one self radiating in the heart of your very being. Awesome. Yes, please do feel free to check me out at chirayadharma.com. And let's just go back to the chat and see if our lovely friends, Neil or Alan or anybody, has any comments or questions about this particular little conversation we've been in.
Hey, Chiraya, thanks
Hey,
for
Gary.
that.
Absolutely.
I mean, what's adding to all this wisdom that you're sharing is that the times are changing, that the vibrational frequency of the earth is changing. I think someone said maybe that's why Neil has to forge ahead on new platforms, because those are old vibrations that are keeping us in an old place. So talk about that new energy that all of us, including our bodies, our cellular structures, are embodying, really.
Yes, it's being said that there's no turning back. It's not going to not happen. There's no chance of this awakening not happening. There's no chance of this new dawn and this new day for humanity and the planet not happening. It is going to happen. And we're waltzing through this time. Let's just think of ourselves as waltzing through it, right? Dancing through this time frame where this old energy from the subconscious, from the hidden, from the shadow government, the shadow social things that have been going on, all the hidden stuff is showing up so we can see what's been underneath humanity. And at the same time, in our higher consciousness, we need to steer it to what we want. So what do we want in a social media platform? Right. What do we want in our ability to broadcast? Neil, Alan, just riff on this with me here.
Neil's the perfect person to design a social media platform because he's dealing with it.
It'll just take too much effort, take away from creating events. But what we really want is definitely the censorship element of it all and transparency, because they can just do it without giving you information on why, and I understand that the argument is they're a private company, so they have the ability to do that. However, when you get to the point where you can sway public opinion all over the world, even more than one single country, you're no longer in the private sector. You need to have some regulations. So what's going on with social media platforms is they don't have the regulation. So that keeps them in check so that it's better for us, So we need to create something that has those involved in it.
Let's brainstorm about it, but let's also ask people in the, online here for their contribution, so it becomes a whole community thing. So maybe we can have a forum you could schedule with all this 7,000 people signed up. Just think about that,
Yeah, yes.
Yes, and we could riff on it a little bit here. Just let's imagine we engage on social media, on our beautiful internet, in ways that feel so nourishing to our soul. We feel safe and confident in the platform, and we trust that it is going to allow us to express ourselves and to share the things that we feel are important to us and attract the people who love that. And we know that these companies and these platforms are so full of integrity and love and harmony that we can really count on them and rely on them moving forward. And we know that there's whatever kind of regulations or other agreement fields are needed are in place, making these beautiful places to share beautiful truths that help us move beyond these challenging times on the planet. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Sounds great to me.
There's a question in the chat. Where can I learn more about daily practices? I didn't get it fully. This from Daniel.
Yeah. So, okay. At my website, there are a number of books that is going to have they have so many exercises in them. And if you join my list, if you feel called to go to Chiraya Dharma and join the list, and we do a weekly practice together, and then you could translate those practices into your daily life if you feel called to, or modify them to your liking. So that's one way I'm offering to help support people with the daily practice.
There's another question here too. I find the survival I am an immigrant solo show, so pervading that I am trying to figure out how to effectively counterbalance. Just a quiet meditation doesn't seem enough. How to amplify to finally get out of survival mode.
Yeah. So the quiet meditation will be the first thing to still your mind, because the survival mode means that your brain is kicking into the fight or flight mentality, and that's what happens. There's no judgment on that. It's just we get into stress mode, and that causes a lot of chemical reactions to happen in our body, which makes it more difficult to slow down and quiet down. So believe it or not, the simplicity of practicing silence is really just the first step. It's a first very important step to being able to get into the energy where your new thoughts of what you want instead become potentiated enough to carry you beyond the old experience. And that's a very quick nutshell on that. I hope that that is helpful. And yes, there are many things, many steps after quieting the mind, or even while you're quieting your mind, because when you are in a quiet mind state, now that is when you want to recite your reality creation script. You want to do your visualization. You want to feel the new feeling of harmony, positivity, and well-being from that state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, great. That same woman says, I think loss of Facebook is no loss of yours, ultimately. This other comment from Bill Van Horn says, it's about phase shifting reality deeper into darkness and false conditioning. When that happens, it creates an energy. The dark hand feeds on it. It makes Chiraya's work more important than ever. Do you have a comment?
So I'm going to strive to comprehend exactly. That's a deep thought he has there.
They're talking about, it's about phase shifting reality. Do you see it under the comment section?
Q&A, or it's in comments?
Yeah. So, okay, it's all about phase shifting reality deeper into darkness and false conditioning. So phase shifting reality deeper into darkness and so shifting out of it, I guess. When that happens, it creates an energy. So when you try to do that, it creates an energy the dark hand feeds on, like when you are basically involved in it. So it makes what you're doing more important than ever.
When you try to shift out of the darkness and conditioning, it gives more, they come after you more in a sense. So this is why what you're teaching is.
Well, yeah. And so it's like, that's that polarity, right? That's that my two elbows are representing the columns that are battling each other. And what Bill, I think, is we're phase shifting to a higher consciousness where we can witness and see the play of this drama. And like Alan said, this sort of war almost is becoming apparent here, this battle for what are they doing when they censor you? They're saying, we don't want your thought forms to influence anybody else. We don't want your thoughts that you're thinking to condition the people that are on our platform. That's what they're saying. They're saying, we don't want you to reality create in your way, because we know that when you put out new thought forms, it's going to create a different reality, and we don't want you to do that. So in essence, that's what they're saying. But we're saying, well, okay, we won't do it there. We'll do, because we're doing it because that's what we want to do, and we're free beings. Yeah. We have the right to do that. So yes, and I agree with Bill. It is important, and that's why I'm speaking about it, because never has there been a more important moment for us to get a hold of our thoughts and get a hold of our consciousness, because it is being conditioned in multiples of ways. And if you go back to what John D'Souza was saying yesterday, I recommend people to go back and listen. There is some very naughty things going on potentially that he's talking about with conditioning people who are watching mainstream news and things like this, like literally like programming. Right. So now, how do you counteract that? Your own thoughts for yourself are still more powerful. And again, what do we do with these guys who are doing these things? We love, we forgive, we become unconditional. We feel the pain, the hurt, whatever we're feeling about it, and yet we move beyond it. We love that part unconditionally. We love this whole co-creation unconditionally. We become non-resistant to it. This is what's happening now. Oh, wow, censorship. Okay, how do we want to respond? What do we want instead? How do we now focus our consciousness towards these new realities of our own choosing and continue to do it?
Right.
With love.
I was just wanted to say, Timothy Leary used to talk about the thought police. And one of the reasons he was banned is because he had something that would make people think differently. but we're not talking about drugs here. We're talking about exchange of ideas, which I think is even more powerful than anything Timothy Leary was doing. So we are really helping people to think differently. We're helping each other to think differently. That's why I'm here for 5 days, because I want to learn everything everyone has to say. So it shifts the programming that I've been fed my whole life. So we're all helping each other to lift up into these new realities. What were you saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you kind of tapped into like the whole concept of the saying, don't be against something, be for something. You know, when you're against it, you create more of it, you create more of the energy. And then when you're for something else, by default, you're not energizing the other thing that is on the opposite of the spectrum, right? Like you're energizing the solution, right? And that's actually what a lot of people have been saying. Billy said it like 4 times in his talk, at least, like that focus on the solution. And that's what it is right now. We've, a lot of people, including myself, I really do check myself a lot of times, have been complaining a lot about the way things have been going. And, but now we have to realize there are actually more of us that are complaining about the way things were, that we don't think that we're for the best interest of humanity. So there's enough of us now to create something different. So events like this is what's key. We are all independently having these thoughts. Let's bring the cohesiveness together and synergize our energy so we can create that change.
Don't you think we've just been pushed to find a better solution? It's like, it's like the need for invention, because now we're at a critical moment where we can't rely on the old forms. So we are all being pushed to awaken to new creativity, to see, okay, we have these basic internet platforms. How are we going to make it more accessible to a larger number of people that will start to influence more people? So
yes, exactly. So there is so much good in it all, and we have to be gentle with ourselves when we do have emotions, we do have reactions, but we're learning how to navigate and to continue to pull ourselves back into that still point within, from which we can really bring in the focused thought and creativity of what we're co-creating. And imagine with me all of the millions and even probably potentially billions of people around the planet right now who are beginning to awaken, or who have been awakening, who are already awakened to these higher truths and this higher knowing about how humanity really operates from the heart. And it is unstoppable. It's an unstoppable force of love that is, we're going to have to ride through. I think of it as a big bar of translucent soap right now, like 2020 to 2020, whatever, when this stuff settles out, right? See all the way through that translucent bar of soap to the other side where this new reality is already birthed. Spend as much time each day as you can feeling yourself in that new reality. We are being that new reality so strongly that it must come, and it will.
After the end of the last 2 days, I felt my body buzzing. I felt a shift. I think everyone's knowledge and information and just presence is already at another vibration. If we take it all in, it will affect our cellular structure. And for me, I actually physically feel it,
Me too. Yeah. And that's important for us to feel our physiology, to feel the energy moving through this vessel. That is our communication system with the universe, with love, with source. And more to take care of our vessels, to feed it really high vibrational food, to do what we need to do, to clean it out, to clear out the old toxins, to do the detox, because even though we're an eternal spiritual being beyond the physical vessel, the cleaner and clearer that we can be down here, the easier it's going to be for us to navigate and receive that guidance and feel good and have the strength to move through all that.
Right. Hey, Neil, do you want to bring in Gerald in? Are we ready?
She's not in yet, so I emailed her, but she did email me today asking about it. But let's just do this last question for you, Chiraya. So, Dave is asking, can you just say a little bit about your history and how you got into this path?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, it's kind of got into me. So my earliest memory, actually, before I actually did have memories of the womb, but my earliest memory of being a little conscious being is at age 3, when I was doing reality creation with God and talking to my parents about it. And I'm sure they were like, who is this child? And then by age 7, I was naturally doing energy clearing on myself. And I didn't call it that. I was just I was raking my aura, you know, when I went to bed at night. And then by 16, I was creating healing processes for myself because I intuitively knew that because of the negativity that was surrounding me as a child, God bless my parents and my family, but there were challenges, right? So I knew I needed to work on myself. And then by 18, the earth started talking to me. By my early 20s, I started having connection with the goddess and the word spirit. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then throughout my 20s, I took multiples of healing trainings in different modalities, everything from soul clearing to healing touch to energy work and on and on and on. And then, and had a lot of direct teachers coming to me. And then the guides started teaching me directly different healing modalities and speaking to me about these things and how they were helping me on my path. And then from there, it just kept increasing in terms of the abilities, the psychic abilities that started unlocking and all that, excuse me. And then I was informed that I would be writing some books that would be important books for these times, for this transition. And that has started happening. And a lot of the books are already out now. And so thank you for asking that. That about sums it up in a nutshell. You can read a little bit more deeper on my bio page on the ChirayaDharma.com.
Well, thanks, Chiraya. We're going to be hearing from you later, right? Anyway.
And I'll be hosting a few more interviews. And again, I just want to remind people, if you want to do the weekly meditation with me on Sundays, just join my list and then hit reply and say, hey, I want to join the weekly meditation. And I'll be happy to invite you to those.